Welcome back to Past Your Prime, the podcast for active adults balancing life, training, and rehab. I have to start over because I started with part 2 when it should have been part 1. Welcome back to Past Your Prime, the podcast for active adults balancing life, training, and rehab. I'm Alex Keicher, pro volleyball player, dad, and a guy who currently requires a full 10-minute warm-up sequence just to comfortably reach for a dropped pen on the floor. Now, a few weeks ago, we did an episode on osteoarthritis and why hearing there is nothing you can do is an absolute lie. The response to that episode was insane. Turns out there are thousands of you out there who are sick of being told just to sit on the couch and wait for joint replacement. But we had a couple of folks reach out and say, okay, I get the theory, but how do I actually execute this without flaring up my joints? So today, Craig and I are going to do a complete tactical deep dive. We are moving past the basic motion is lotion talk and mapping out the exact granular strategies you need. I just referenced him, but I'm joined by Craig Smith, PT, strength coach, and the man behind the Smith Performance Center. How you doing today, Craig?
Doing fantastic. It was insane. It was the first 100,000, well over 100,000 view week we've ever had.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have we made it?
No, not at all. We're still people were interested. I guess that's interesting.
I feel like we're still like aspiring podcasters, even though we've made 70 episodes.
I don't know. I wouldn't say aspiring if we've already started recording. We're doing it.
Yeah.
It's more we might be aspiring podcasters just talking to no one.
Yeah.
Well, not aspiring. We're podcasters with a audience that doesn't care what we say.
Yeah. Or just not a lackluster audience, but just less than 1,000
per episode who watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely a lot more than the first episode.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're still listening at this point, share it.
Yeah.
Just share this part. This has been great thus far.
I actually do have a lot of people who tell me that they listen to it.
Yeah.
A lot.
I was just out at the beach and I've got at least one person in San Diego that listens somewhat regularly.
Yeah, I mean...
And they're a dog.
That is ridiculous. I was surprised about how many people reached out, though. That's pretty surprising.
Yeah.
So that's why I think we wanted to hit this again and get more specific, get actually very tactical, and hit the joints that I think most people will come in with an osteoarthritis diagnosis.
So today's going to be a 2-parter. Feel free to use the timestamps if you want to find a specific joint to talk about, because we'll link those in the description here. But just to kind of recap before going joint by joint, what's kind of the basic osteoarthritis management process?
So the very first thing is you're going to want to confirm that the pain generator, the diagnosis of osteoarthritis, is actually what's causing your pain.
And that's going to be kind of our assumption for each of these, is that diagnosis has been confirmed.
Yes, but I think it might be useful. It would be useful for us to throw out a few of the common mimickers that people or contributors to some of the symptoms that you're having that can mimic the symptoms, which the issue... we may even said this in the last episode, but what I always think is interesting is people will have an osteoarthritis diagnosis. They could go to like an orthopedic surgeon, for example, and the ortho will say, and this is actually an example that I've heard multiple times. So this isn't meaning to be like a random knock on the field of surgery. But
do you want to say names?
No, but that would actually be funny.
So
and this is where they live.
Yeah.
But no, I don't enjoy the framing that eventually you're going to have a total replacement. And so what I've heard before is somebody will be told they don't need the surgery right now, but there'll come a time when the symptoms get bad enough that we'll have to do surgery. And they anchor this situation in the future where this person's 100% going to have a flare up. That should be expected when you have some of these types of issues, but that doesn't mean it's not managed. Flare ups are completely normal as part of a cycle with this type of a diagnosis. You just have to learn how to manage it really well, and the flare up can be very well controlled. Individuals who don't have that, they will have a flare up and then they'll assume it means the joint's now gone, and the joint may have not progressed at all. So I really want people to understand that this framework as we go through this is a way just to understand of, if you have this as an issue, it's a management problem now. And if you manage it really well, there's a good chance you won't have to do surgery on it, and that you won't be limited by it. It's those two things. I'm not guaranteeing that you won't have to have surgery. I'm not guaranteeing you won't have flare-ups, but you'll be able to control it, which to me is very useful.
I've been to the surgeon twice. They told me I need surgery twice, and I had surgery 0 times out of 2.
And
not that I'm a great case study, because I'm a walking injury.
You are a walking injury. I like that about you, though.
Yeah.
I often wonder, where would you be if you didn't have the worst instincts in the world around injury management?
I'd be sitting right here, podcasting with Craig Smith.
You'd still be here.
Yeah. No, I think we were talking about my internal dialogue after hurting my wrist a couple of weeks ago, which was, should I stop right now?
And your brain goes, no, absolutely
it's like,
not.
no way. There's no way.
I honestly,
can I get some more tape on this? Absolutely.
Did your brain berate you? Was
my
it calling
brain
you names?
Immediately was like, you need to stop right now. But my body told me don't stop right now.
Wait. Your body told you to stop, but then did your brain see? I feel
no, they both told me to stop, and I just didn't.
You didn't. Which part told you not to stop?
Neither of them.
So everything was telling you to stop, but then your decision though was to continue.
Yes. It's like an out-of-body experience. It was great.
So is there something on your shoulder behind you?
Yeah, I even thought about like our episode where I talked about the little devil and the little, and, I was just like, I'm not listening to either of you. I don't know which one Craig is, the devil or the angel, but I'm not listening to either of them. I'm just going to push through.
It just makes me think, did you have...
At least I thought about it, right?
Well, I mean, that's a positive. Yeah. I was wondering,
did you have one joint in my body that might end up with arthritis? So.
Did you have like a college coach or a high school coach, or maybe somebody who had a big impression on you when you were younger that made you feel that you faked injuries or were a baby?
Now that you say that, I do distinctly remember getting a block in high school. I tore every ligament in my thumb. My thumb like immediately quadrupled in size. Yeah. And he just like put like one small piece of tape over it. It was like, get back in there. And I don't know if that specifically has changed my injury perspective since then, but...
Did it help?
No, not at all. It hurts so bad. It hurts so bad. But yeah, it's just like, maybe that has framed my mindset, like me as a 15-year-old volleyball player being told that it's fine.
That is so funny. That's so funny. I remember I have a distinct memory where my leg felt really wrong, and being I'd have to go to the athletic training room before practice in football. I'd have to go after. Sometimes I'd have to get retaped during the practice, and the whole practice was horrible. And I don't remember what else I would do to make it feel better. And then I remember the coach would come through and he would say things like, you can't make the club in the tub. And he would say that over and over and over again. And the idea being, if you're in the athletic training room too much, you're not going to be playing on Saturday. Oh, okay. Right. And so I remember there's some things that why would I play through first, like a horrible injury on my leg? Well, because you have this person in your ear telling you that you have to push through.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, it's interesting. I always wonder when I've done things where it definitely hurts and it's stupid, and then afterwards I'm like, I'm not 100% sure what was in my head when I started pushing through.
Well, my initial reaction was like, you need to stop. I even went to one of my teammates. I was like, you might need to come in right now, man. Yeah. And then I go in and have my best play of the whole tournament, 3 plays later.
So then it validates.
And then he told me that at the timeout. He's like, dude, how are you going to go bounce the ball out? You just told me I might need to come in for you. I was like, I don't know, man.
This is my life now.
This is my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And every time I get hurt, I'm like, well, this is going to be the last time I ever get to play again. So might as well keep going.
Okay. So that's fatalistic as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have this fatalistic hellhole journey that you think you're going to go on if you don't have. So if you stop, you think you stop forever.
Potentially.
I see why you don't stop.
Right.
Okay.
Like if this is going to be my last time, might as well go out swinging.
Okay. So I guess step one isn't actually confirm the diagnosis. It's confirm if you have a pathological mindset. All right. I got it. I love it.
Okay. So back on track. That was a fun little side quest.
So we had the management process.
Right.
Okay. So we have confirm the diagnosis, really clarify the current state of the joint, identify peak stress, average stress, and make sure you understand what tissue response level you're having with those, which will go more detail on tissue response level. Create a therapeutic gap, which means you know what treatments make the joint feel better and actually improve tissue capacity, and what triggers make it worse, how to rebuild and monitor mechanical tolerance with activity, and then finally, how do you update your body inventory? And I think we're going to do that on every single joint that we see the most often.
Ready. Do you want to just start with joints now?
I think we
can go over the questions, but we're going to go over the questions with each one. So I don't want to hit them all. I don't want to beat a dead horse.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons is the person that we actually did that first episode for responded and said that it was actually specifically the SI joint. Okay. So I think we start there.
Right. So the first question on the SI joint region would be, how do you determine whether the SI joint region is actually contributing?
Well, it's interesting. Do you know much about the SI joint? No, not at all.
I don't even know where that is, honestly. Is that in your back?
So it's your sacroiliac joint. Does that change? Sacroiliac.
No. Is that a flower?
What if I say sacrum? Do you know your sacrum is?
In your neck.
Wow. Okay. So it's actually your pelvis. It's in your pelvis.
What is that?
Okay. No. My God. All right. So your SI joint there's 3 joints really that comprise the pelvis. So you have 2 SI joints, and you have your pubic symphysis joint in the front. And so the way that your pelvis comes together, there's actually is motion in your pelvis.
I feel like you're holding me right now.
I know. You see this? I'm just creating this compression. The front of it, the pubic symphysis, actually it was one of the things that allows for the pelvis to expand for birth, right? Which I think is kind of interesting. You'll see in that joint that can become arthritic. Often it can become arthritic in runners. So you'll get what's called like an osteoarthritis pubis. SI joint, though, I would say it's overly diagnosed as a pain generator because there's a really common referral over the SI joint from your low back. So that's it's kind of interesting.
Close on the first back.
No, you totally were. I prefer to make it seem like
I'm the village idiot.
Yeah.
I played a little bit dumb there, but it was fun.
But it was good.
Yeah.
Well, so what's important is that the sacrum and the way that where it attaches to the ilium, you get really mild motion called nutation and counternutation. Basically, these 2 bones moving in, but it's very, very small motion. It doesn't really move that much at all. And it's also a kind of a mix between a synovial and a fibrocartilaginous joint, which means over time it basically fuses. And I think that it's one of those joints that gets dramatically overdiagnosed because it's incredibly stable. I think that there's been PTs and a lot of different practitioners, and they'll say that they can test and see that it's out of place. I struggle with that. I mean, I always use it as an example. I remember in cadaver lab trying to access the SI joint, and there was no moving that joint. And the person that we had was completely fused together. There was no motion. And I just struggle to think that a whole bunch of people have SI joint pathologies.
I feel like you hear chiropractors talk about manipulating the SI joint quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, if you do that, if you actually get out of place with your SI joint and somebody has to push it back in place, you probably got hit by a bus. And I'm guessing that, I have a hard time believing it. But hey,
I've been hit by a dump truck.
I could
Not
be
a
wrong.
bus, though.
Are you serious?
Yeah. It was in my car, but
Oh, okay.
yeah.
But I'm saying without the car, you got hit by a bus.
Yeah.
And
No, a dump truck.
I mean, so you got hit by a dump truck. Let's just say that. But I'm not saying when you're in your car. But so I struggle with that, and so let's just say that is the pain generator. The way we confirm it is typically by stress tests. So there's an author, Laslett, who has basically a cluster of SI joint provocative tests that you can do. You get more than one of them, you can start to rule in that that's probably one of your pain generators. So if you like your dorsolateral test, there's a few different stress tests that you can do. But then you combine that also in groups who are highly at risk for getting pain from the SI joint. And that's going to be women, multiple pregnancies, and then some level of unilateral trauma through that SI joint.
Dump truck
would work, right? And then I think those really make sense. So now that's really confirming it's the joint, but there are tons of things that refer to that area, especially the back, that you want to make sure you rule out the back first. And that'd be one of the big ones of confirming that that's what the diagnosis is. And then I really like, if I really think it's SI joint, confirming it with an injection is super helpful as well.
What kind of injection?
It's the cortisone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, cortisone. And then I think that makes it much easier for me to believe in that as the diagnosis. But if you don't have a positive stress test, or at least multiple stress tests that make it feel worse, and you don't hit any of those other criteria, women, multiple pregnancies, and with a pretty verifiable trauma that you did to the joint, I think it's a hard one to rule in as your primary diagnosis, even if you have imaging that says you have an arthritic joint.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, what are the key signs?
I really like a couple on the SI joint. So the easiest one is a stress test. So
Same thing we just talked about.
So my favorite's a dorsolateral stress test. So say somebody's laying on their back, you put your hand on their pelvis and you basically push down, and it feels uncomfortable, but it basically, the pressure on the iliac crest or iliac that I'm pushing on will cause the stress to the joint, and the stress to that joint will cause them to feel their symptoms. And then I like to take an SI lock belt, basically place the belt on so it stiffens the whole structure, and then it'll test negative.
Should I lay on the table right now?
Yeah, I know. We just have you go up there and I'm just crush on your pelvis.
Yeah.
My pelvis feels wrong now. But that's a big one. And then it's pretty localized. You don't get huge referrals from your SI joint. It's going to be right over where the joint's at.
Cool. What are the additional stressors that overload it, aside from you aggressively pushing on it?
Well, it's a key transfer site for force. So single leg can be a big one, just single leg stance. So if you do what's called like a Trendelenburg, where you balance on one leg, lift the leg up, that can cause shear at the SI joint. You can use the activity specifically that typically hurts you. So running, walking, lunges are going to be a big one for this. And the reason unilateral makes it more stress is you're thinking of what causes that SI joint relative to the ilium to basically
twist,
nutate or counter nutate.
Yeah.
So where they're going in different directions, and that causes the symptom. So lunges, step ups, anything where it's one leg, the other leg back, running, walking, those are all going to be ones that I typically look for in their history. And then, like I said, you can use that as a key sign over and over again.
Nice. Therapeutic gap. What do you do to start to create it?
So just as a reminder, just to hit it again, a therapeutic gap is basically making sure the treatments, the things that make the tissue capacity go up, is higher than the triggers that make it go down. Triggers for the SI joint, I actually look at very similarly to when women are pregnant. So when women are pregnant, they have a hormone that's released that increases ligament laxity. And because of that, they are more prone to irritating that type of structure. Like an SI joint, that's typically the ligaments are so strong, the joint doesn't really move that much. They'll get more motion than normal, and they can put increased stress through it. So they lose what's called some of the form closure that stabilizes the joint. And I think that part of it means that you have to be careful when you're loading somebody when they're pregnant. So, after like the second trimester, my brain always goes to limiting SI joint stresses. So I take out the split leg positions. You may limit running. You may limit things that are going to overload the SI joint. So that's going to be the triggers, but that trigger list can actually be quite large. Let me think through that. Because if you do like a squat, for example, you don't have one joint going in one direction, the other joint going in the opposite direction. It's all uniform. So I don't really see. So if somebody comes in and they say, "Oh, squat really hurts me, but lunge feels fine." I'm not thinking SI joint. But if they come in and step ups are really hurting them, do the stress test, and SI joint's coming out, then I'll take anything. I'll look for any trigger that basically recreates that torsional stress that's happening at the SI joint.
Is it going to hurt just like in your pelvic core? Like, I don't even know.
It'll hurt on your back, like posteriorly.
Like tailbone area?
Literally.
Above or below?
Yeah, because your tailbone's your sacrum.
Okay.
Right?
Good.
Yes, you nailed it. There. You nailed it. Treatment-wise, it's kind of interesting. There are some MOBs that seem to have some relief.
MOBs?
Mobilizations.
I know.
I don't think
just for the other village idiots out there.
We're not calling you idiots.
Yeah, but if you didn't know what MOBs are, like I didn't.
It reminds me of Tommy Boy when they're showing him how to do the buckle.
Oh, Chris Farley, man.
Yeah, and then David Spade's like, if you don't know how to put a buckle on, hit your call light and we'll come beat you with it or something like that. It's like, we're not saying that. But therapeutic gap wise, the treatment that I really like is actually artificial capacity tools. So the SI lock belt's amazing because it basically cinches it really, really tight. It actually allows the joint to stiffen, and that can be extremely therapeutic because it's the shear that's happening through the joint that's actually causing the increased irritability of the joint.
Nice.
So that's one of my favorite ones. But then on this one, in my opinion, getting the gap, it's really critical that you really manage your trigger list. That's where I would obsess, because if you obsess on that, you cinch it, you make sure that you're not overstressing it, you're not having symptoms, you can now let the joint stiffen, then we can come back and increase load and make sure that you're tolerating it.
Okay. What capacities are you looking at that need to be rebuilt for the SI joint?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest part is they have to be able to handle, they really, really have to be able to handle the shear stresses. And so anything that's going to cause that to happen and be out of control, we have to strengthen. So glute max is going to be one of the more obvious ones. Anything that your adductors, your transverse abdominis, anything that causes you to have better control of your pelvis relative to your spine and then be able to absorb forces that are coming up your leg, you're going to do really well with. So I think the counterintuitive one on this would be if you have weak quads and you have to lock your knee out, every step you're basically jamming your knee, but you're also jamming your hip and you're also jamming your SI joint. So you can have this overload of stresses that go all the way up. And if you hit, what's up with your face?
You're jamming. You're jamming. You're jamming.
Oh my God, dude. Would you be able to put music that happens right there like that? Yeah, he's like, shut up. Don't talk to me. But anything that, if you're not absorbing force and it goes up the leg, and let's say you did have a trauma specifically to your SI joint, instead of your knee being the thing that all of a sudden is painful and you're overloading an arthritic knee joint, you're overloading a SI joint. And so you have to really think through everything that absorbs force. So quad, glute max, glute med, pretibials, gastroc, soleus. You have to control all of those. And if you don't, you're overloading a joint.
You don't want to overload your joints.
Yes, I think, and
you want to stretch them aggressively.
Good God, you people. I hate that so much. But then it's from there, you have to think through a gradual rebuild, gradual increasing tolerance, gradually add things back in. Things were on the trigger list, you can gradually reintroduce them over time.
Like bridges, single leg bridges, some of those type things would be.
They'd be great at the start because you're out of gravity, right? You're producing that, you're activating the force. But then if we go into, from there, we do something in gravity, you want to reduce the load because your body's now having to also handle it gravity. And the last thing you probably want to add would be split leg positions with load.
Maybe even assisted.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it has to be, you don't want us to be symptomatic. And that's the key part. It can't be symptomatic.
That's the therapeutic gap.
That's the therapeutic gap.
Okay, I'm happy that we were able to cover a couple of exercises there specifically and a little progression. How do you know that it's improving?
Biggest thing is we should start to reintroduce everything. See, the SI joint is one that I would fully expect you should be able to get back to all activities on. You may have to mitigate how you do that. And if you're somebody who's really, really mobile, hypermobile, you're somebody who scores really high in the bite and index scale, which is, I think we've covered that before, right?
Never heard of that.
Okay, so it's a scale that you can use to look at the level of mobility you have everywhere. It's like one of them is, can you bring your thumb?
My daughter can do that one.
Yeah. Hyperextended elbows, hyperextended knees, hands flat on the ground. You basically assess all those, and then another one's like pulling your finger back, and if it goes past 90. So there's like all of these like tests, and if you score super high on it, you literally don't have the tension, stiffness in your connective tissue to prevent yourself from hurting yourself. And so somebody who has the trauma, multiple pregnancies, female, and then they also are super hypermobile. Okay, well, we may say on high stress events with peak stresses, running, sprinting, maybe you wear the SI lock belt just to support the tissue. But then as you start to feel better and better, and if it stiffens, you do these gradual tests of tolerance, and you can do more and more and more and just level it up. But you have to get to the point where peak stress doesn't hurt you, whatever the peak stress is that you're delivering, and then go from there. But you can't deliver a peak stress that hurts you and think that you're going to be healing. It's going to be setting you back. So it's a big deal.
Ultimately, you want to be feeling better, obviously less pain, and be able to take on more activity.
Yeah, and I would say
pain.
And I would say just a quick recap from your body inventory. If you're adding it on, make sure you understand the stress tests that hurt it. And that's going to be the easiest one for your key sign. Treatment's going to be SI lock belt, and then make sure that you have everything that crosses that joint, especially glute max, especially your core, that those are working and making you feel better. And then triggers are going to be split leg positions, anything that causes the joint to shear. So lunge, think of like a lunge would be a really good one.
Split squat.
Yeah, make sure you monitor those. If you have a flare, you don't want to be doing those.
Perfect. Next joint. Talk about shoulder osteoarthritis.
Do you have this?
I hope not. I think the only one I'm currently at risk for is my wrist, which we won't cover today. But that's because I broke a bone in there. Anyway.
Yep, primary injury. I mean, that's a thing.
Yep. So how do you confirm the arthritis is contributing to the shoulder pain?
Shoulder, I just basically looked at they have passive range of motion loss in basically every direction of the shoulder that you can take the shoulder into. So flexion, external rotation, internal rotation, abduction, and each of them will feel limited and painful. I'll get a capsular infield, so it just feels like really stiff at the end. And I compare that to the other side, and that's typically going to indicate that there's a joint component to it. Obviously, then we have the confirmation from imaging that there's been joint level changes, and those are going to be the ones that are like, oh, we have a shoulder OA happening.
Is that the most common symptom, is limited range of motion?
It's to me, it's the symptom that tells you, because you always want to separate if it's an active range of motion limitation or a passive range of motion limitation. Because if you have sometimes people will come in and it looks the way that they can't move it when they're moving themselves, as if, oh man, we're dealing with a joint that's really irritated, and then you move it passively and there's no symptoms.
I must have an arthritic wrist then.
Yeah. Well, yours is stiff.
Yeah.
But I think there's a couple reasons why, which we should totally just do an episode on wrist arthrosis for sure.
Yeah.
But
thank you.
But with the shoulder though, then you test and you rule out all the muscles and everything as well, the tendons and
rotator cuff,
all
and
that,
labrums,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one's a big one because once again, kind of like we were talking about the SI joint, you have things that can refer into the area, and there can be multiple structures that refer to multiple different areas around the shoulder. So location of pain to me is not diagnostic. And then the only other thing with shoulder OA is you want to rule out the AC joint and SC joint because they can sometimes mimic the shoulder joint. People will come in and they'll have a diagnosis, but then you'll realize they have a arthritic AC joint. So you just want to make sure the actual joint's the glenohumeral joint.
Okay. I think you kind of already hit them, but just to reiterate, what are the key signs?
To me, the key sign is your range of motion. Passively for sure, but when you're doing it on your own, it's going to be active range of motion. But if you have somebody who's checking it, you want to be looking at your actual motion passively to see if it's continuing to improve.
Easy enough. What stresses are going to overload the shoulder?
You know what's interesting? One of them that I think maybe we don't talk enough about is one of them I look for is people being told to pack their shoulder. You ever heard of that?
You've told me that a lot, but for different problems.
So people will pack their shoulder, they'll retract and pull down, and with the shoulder joint, a third of your motion overhead comes from your scapula upwardly rotating. And so I think inadvertently people will be told to pack in certain positions that actually eliminates even more motion from the whole scapulothoracic glenohumeral joint motion, like the way they all work together. So I think one of the triggers that I always look for is if somebody is actually trying to keep their scapula really stable, but then taking away even more motion from the glenohumeral joint. I think that's going to be one of the common things that overloads it with just general motion. But then I also look for anything that's going to take them into end range. So, one that's really surprising is back squats. It's like a hidden one.
Oh, that's
right?
true. Yeah.
Because you put the bar behind your back, you have it here, and you're going into pretty extreme external rotation with a little bit of abduction, and people will not be able to tolerate it. And they won't understand. They'll feel I'm tight, but they're actually irritating the crap out of their shoulder every time they squat.
Front squats it is.
Run squats forever, baby. And then just in general, anything so if it goes end range motion, and then anything that's pretty heavy load that they can't keep control of the whole time can be very, very provocative. I actually find that a lot of rotator cuff exercises will blow people up. Because
sense.
They accidentally go to end ranges and they don't realize they're doing it.
Yeah. Give me an example.
Sideline external rotation or external rotation with band. And if you have a limitation into ER, the ER being external rotation, people will go into the pain position and they'll just continue to go into this painful spot every time it hurts, but they're building the rotator cuff, but they're actually pissing off their joint.
As a reminder, if it hurts, don't do it.
Yeah. Don't.
PSA.
Whoops. I do think this is one of them where average activity, average stresses can be a monster because, if you have a limited internal rotation and you're going to tuck your shirt in or put your wallet in your back pocket
or grab something up off a shelf,
boom, you irritate it again. So with the shoulder, once it's hot and it's activated, it can be very difficult to calm it down. And so the interaction between the peak stresses and average stresses of your life can make it really, really hard to manage. And it's almost uniquely irritable compared to other things.
Just from having a shoulder injury. That obviously wasn't OA, but like you said, put your belt on and trying to reach around to the other side, not happening. Trying to put your socks on in the morning while standing, oh, that's weird. I can't reach there.
Why does this hurt already?
Anything overhead at all. So,
well, it is kind of funny though. So I think sometimes it's a peak stress you have to consider, but the average stress on this one matters.
Got it. To that point, how do you start to create the therapeutic gap given all of the day-to-day stresses that can contribute?
Yeah, trigger management's key on this one. You really have to think through what is hurting you. So making sure that you understand every trigger. I mean, there's almost like an insane list. So if it's for example, most people are going to be right-handed and they'll have their mouse on the right side. And the way that they'll position themselves, they literally might go into external rotation a few hundred times without realizing it. Right? So this could be provocative versus this is not provocative, right? So you have to think through all of your setup. So sometimes with this, they have to have a pillow underneath their arm the whole workday. And that'll keep them from going into end range external rotation that's clearly irritating them, but because they're in work mode, they don't even think about it. I've had before where people doing cross body reaches will totally irritate it. I'll have where they've put their dishware every morning. It's in a reach position that they always hurts them, but they never change it because that's always where their dishes have been. That type of thing.
That's where the bowls go, man.
Yeah. The bowls go right there. Don't change where the bowl's at.
Yeah, I'm not putting the bowls underneath.
It is kind of interesting when you have somebody we talk through what their triggers are, and they're like, that's a no-go for me. I'm not changing that. Like, yeah, I'm going to deal with this.
Gonna stay hurt forever.
Yeah, this is not, I'm like, that's fine with me. I'm cool with that. Yeah, it's totally cool.
But the bowls can go underneath.
They could go lower for a period of time. So that I think I always find that to be funny though. Treatment wise, I love shoulder traction with a band. This is one we can put a video up on here, just basically of how to do shoulder traction. It's really, it's simple, but it can be very difficult to execute. The band, you want to have it in the plane of the joint, which the plane of the joint's not directly to the side. It's a little bit anterior, about 30 degrees. And then the arm that your traction has to be fully relaxed, or else you're going to irritate it.
That's the part that I always struggled with.
It's super hard. And then the other part is you have a whole bunch of nerves that dump into your arm, your brachial plexus, and the peripheral nerves that they split into dive underneath. And so the pressure of the band can actually cause a lot of hand discomfort. So you have to adjust it in such a way that you're not basically grinding on a nerve. And then from there's certain portions of the capsule that get tight, like your posterior capsule. So posterior shoulder mobs are really helpful initially to get the motion. And then another thing that really helps with treatment wise is getting your cuff to get involved so that you're actually not having any micro instability that's developed because of the compromise of the joint.
Getting into capacities that need to be rebuilt for this one, what's your exercise progression?
Well, it is kind of interesting. I really like to go just isometric initially and not work on anything that overloads the joint. So my progression first is to really focus on cuff activation using something like a suitcase carry, and really work on scapular control at the same time. Scapular stability, glenohumeral joint stability, getting basically the whole cuff to fire. And then I like to progress to some level of motor control that doesn't hurt them. But I really like to have it where there's no movement initially and we can fire the cuff, fire everything, and it feels stable. And then I also like a progression where you go from supported, laying on your back, or a closed chain where your hands are on the ground, and then progress into gravity, and then into full motions that don't hurt it. Pulling motions are typically well tolerated for this joint. So if it's arthritic, you typically can handle pulls
rows
really well.
Different variations there, banded, dumbbell.
Well, and if you think about it, part of that is because when you're doing a horizontal pull, you're not going into any end range positions at all.
Right.
Whereas when you go into presses, it's really common to go into end range positions. I think that's one. The other one that I always think of is I like to take vertical last. Both vertical pulls and vertical presses, you have to be more careful.
Like overhead presses.
Overhead, yep.
Yeah.
But even an overhead pull, like a lat pull, can get you if you're missing end range flexion.
Right.
So you have to be careful that you don't accidentally irritate everything, and it won't feel that bad when you get to the top, because at the top the load's the lightest, right? Like if I'm up here, I'm not actually exerting against really that much force, but then as I come down, it'll feel heavier on the muscle, but you might have irritated when you went to the top. Yeah.
And then lastly, how do we know that it's improving?
The motion improvement is crazy. That's going to be the part that tells us the most. And if you have all of a sudden a dramatic loss of motion, you irritated the joint. If you all of a sudden things are hurting, this is one of them that I think can be pretty insidious. People will think that they tweak something else and they'll say, this all of a sudden is hurting. And then when we check their passive motion, all of a sudden they have a huge motion loss. You have to monitor motion loss. So this one's an easy one. So it's flexion overhead, hand behind your back, hand behind your head. And if you do those, that's an easy way for you to see and assess that your full motion's there. If all of a sudden it gets tighter, and you have to compare it to the same side. You don't compare it to the other side once we have a baseline.
Because you can have it in one shoulder and not the other.
You can. Yeah. You can definitely have it. But the thing is not everybody has equal external rotation or internal rotation side to side. So you have to be careful that you're not trying to recreate the other side, because you may not have as much. It's like, for example,
naturally.
Yeah. So you may have more external rotation on one side versus external rotation on the other one. Yeah. So sometimes people will do like the hand behind their back and they'll like touch their hands in the middle and they can't do it one way versus the other. Well, it's because on one side you have more external rotation and you have more internal rotation on the other one. And so it makes it easier for you to grip it on one side, and it's totally normal to not be able to even come close on the other side. So it's not a
Or
one to
just be
one.
like me and not be close on either. And so you just don't do it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I look like an ogre if I try to do that, like a bizarre person. I'm definitely got the stiff gene. That's for sure. But you also shouldn't hurt after you load. That's the other big thing. So if all of a sudden you're able to exercise and it feels good and you don't feel like somebody beat the crap out of you with a stick, that's also a sign that you're tolerating it better.
Okay. I use that as my key sign that I did a good job, but we're all different
I love that.
here.
We're all different human beings here.
If you've got osteoarthritis, if you've got that diagnosis and want to get it fixed, jump over to smithperformancecenter.com and schedule an appointment. And Craig will help you build that therapeutic gap to get you feeling better.
If you are enjoying this podcast and finding the information useful, please consider supporting us by following the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen.
By subscribing, you help ensure we can continue bringing you this high-level training and rehab science every single week. Leaving us a 5-star review on those platforms is also one of the absolute best, zero-cost ways to support our mission and help grow this community. Our podcast is proudly sponsored and brought to you by Smith Performance Center. If you are an active adult looking to bridge the gap between rehab and elite performance, or if you want to optimize your health from every angle, go to smithperformancecenter.com. They offer elite physical therapy, strength and sports training, and dedicated nutrition coaching to help you build a resilient body that handles the activities you love without breaking down.
If you want to connect with us, see our training clips, or watch the full video versions of these episodes, follow us on Instagram at Spiker Keicher, Craig Smith PT, and Past Your Prime Podcast. And subscribe to the Past Your Prime Podcast on YouTube.
Thanks for tuning in, and remember, you're not past your prime, you're just getting started.
PYP, baby.
Peace. Where did part 1 go?
Where are you? I don't even know where you're at right now. You don't know where you're at either. Seriously, did you delete it?
Oops. Wait.
When you do that.
I was out of the zone. I had to get back in the zone.
You got the zone.
I'm back in the zone.
The zone's on. Get the scapula to function really well. And then, what are you laughing at?
People
I know.
People are dying
I
in
know.
here. Producer Danny's dying over there.
Yeah. I'm trying to give a game message. Yeah, that's hilarious. No, we were talking about that. Water is a hazard.
Yeah.
How many people do you think die a year from they take a drink of water and they choke to death on it?